Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
JSC PAO, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is JSC PAO. How do you hear me?
Randy, we have you loud and clear. Welcome to Space Station.
Thank you. Good morning from NASA's Johnson Space Center, and hello, Crew-1. We are here with Shannon Walker, Victor Glover, Mike Hopkins, and Soichi Noguchi, who are just days away from wrapping up their mission and returning to Earth. But before they do, we have a few reporters lined up to ask questions. If you're on our phone bridge, you can press *1 to ask a question, or *2 if you need to withdraw it. And we'll also be taking questions from social media, so if you're following along at home, you can submit yours using the hashtag #AskNASA. But let's jump right in. We'll start with Phone Bridge and talk with Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
This program is not only going to send the first woman to the moon, but the first person of color. And I wonder what that means to you and what sort of progress you think the agency is making, especially after you've become the first African-American to live on the station for an extended time. Thanks.
Hey, Chris, how you doing? It's good to hear your voice. And I missed the first part of your question, but I believe you were asking about Artemis and the progress NASA has made. And, it's a great thing to be here up in space and to have been a part of this historic mission that was historic in several ways. And, we were joined by Crew 2, which was also historic in several ways. And so what I think it says is that the administration, the agency is doing what it can to continue to explore space, to do it safely, to do it effectively, but also to do it inclusively in a way that represents the best and brightest of America. And so I think that's what's important, that we continue to do that and focus on that in the future.
Thank you. Next, we're going to go to Bill Harwood with CBS News.
It's great to see you guys. Just looking ahead to landing, have you guys gotten a forecast yet? And what did Bob and Doug tell you guys about reentry? What sort of noises, vibrations? I mean, we're still trying to get to know the Crew Dragon spacecraft here from the outside. So anything they passed on to you, we'd sure like to know about, too. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So in terms of the weather brief, we've certainly been following it a little bit, but we haven't been getting a lot of the details yet because we're still, about 48 hours out or so. And so now is the time when the predictions, they start to get a little better. And so we're going to see over here the next 24 hours really of whether we have a go to start the sequence of events that would have us undocking on Wednesday. In terms of some of the advice that Bob and Doug gave us on landing, landings are always fairly dynamic, particularly with the capsules like this, particularly when the chutes are opening. So that's always a little bit exciting. But I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from Doug was just talking about, with this new vehicle and not having landed a lot before, is just making sure you're staying ahead of the capsule. And so I think that's something that all of us have been focusing on over the last few days, preparing for that landing, is just going over our procedures and making sure when we get into that sequence of events that we're ready to go and we're following right along with all of the automation as it takes us to hopefully a safe landing.
Next up, we'll go to Miriam Kramer from Axios.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. So Resilience will also be bringing the Inspiration 4 crew to orbit in September. I'm curious if y'all have any tips and tricks you'd like to give to the ship's new crew before they launch. Have you reached out to them? And for Commander Hopkins, how do you feel about handing over command of Resilience to a civilian? Thanks so much.
Okay, well, I guess I would start with the last part of your question, and I would say I think it's very exciting. I actually look forward to it. I think it's a good thing for human spaceflight to see more and more people getting up into orbit around Earth. It's just it's an amazing experience, and as we look to kind of transition low Earth orbit to the commercial industry, this is a big step along that way, and then NASA can continue to focus on exploration and getting back to the moon and onto Mars through the Artemis program. So again, I am very excited. We have not had a chance to interact with the Inspiration 4 crew yet, but I think all of us would love to have that opportunity and kind of talk to them about what it's like inside Resilience going uphill, and we'll be able to tell them soon here about what it's like coming home as well.
Speaking of Resilience, we have a question from Whitney on Twitter and Facebook asking, since your dragon's name is Resilience, would you give us an example of when you've had to be resilient during your mission?
So that's a great question. I think resilience is one of the most important aspects you can have in this business, an exploration period. And for us, we had a spacewalk that we didn't plan to do, at least at the beginning of our spacewalk planning. And so just from the outset, it was, whenever you go off-road, I like to say you got to have your roll cage, your bumpers up. And so you got to really be vigilant about doing things by the book. And so we studied and were preparing for this fourth spacewalk, my fourth spacewalk, the fifth one overall. And that spacewalk wound up being lots of little details and lots of little activities outside that required a lot of focus and a lot of physical effort, and it was a pretty physically demanding activity. And so that was probably the time on orbit that I can easily recall that we had to be really resilient. I think Hopper and I both felt like it was a grind. We got a great workout that day.
Yep.
Good story. Okay, Christy on Twitter asked, do you get more nervous or excited for launch or for landing?
I would say we're excited for both, and each are a little different. Of course, for a launch, there's the excitement of riding on a rocket, and there's the excitement of you've been training for months, in some case years, for this opportunity, and so it's very exciting to do. And now that we're going home, it's exciting because we don't know quite what to expect landing on the water under parachutes like this, and it's just exciting that we get to go home and see our friends and family. So both are very exciting.
Luckily, you don't have to choose. Okay, let's go back to the phone bridge. We'll go to Marcia Dunn now from the Associated Press.
Down had quite a welcoming committee. What's your take on how the keep-out zone will be handled differently for Wednesday, and what's the danger of having pleasure boats so close to a returning capsule? Thank you.
Yeah, so obviously, great question, and I know NASA and the Coast Guard and SpaceX, everybody involved is very aware of the boats that were around when DM2 landed, and so that is certainly getting a lot of emphasis. And so in terms of the details, I'm sure there's going to be more resources and all of that put to it in terms of making sure people the boats stay away from the landing zone. Really, what makes it dangerous? I don't think any of us are too worried in terms of landing on a boat, but I think it's the hypergulls, the fuel that's used for the thrusters that we have. If there's any kind of a leak, we're okay in the capsule typically, but it's the people in the boats that could be really at the most risk. And so really I think it's the danger for them that we really need to be aware of, and so that's why it's very important for them to stay away and a safe distance, and allow the recovery teams to do their jobs and make sure that there aren't any of those hypergulls and dangerous materials like that could hurt people.
Good advice. Next, Michael Sheets from CNBC.
Well, thanks for taking the time, and great to talk to you from here down on Earth. I'm curious from each of your perspectives, what was the most memorable either experience or moment you had while on the International Space Station? Maybe that was a piece of research, it was your spacewalks. I'd love to hear from each of you on that.
Hey, Michael, thanks for the great question. I was thinking, spacewalk, robotics, and all the experiment, but most memorable is 2 days ago when the door opens and all 4 friends come out into the space station. Yeah, this is our communities looking for, the new members coming, taking over. We have a great camaraderie, and the dinner was great. So the meeting people here is even greater compared to Earth.
And I'll just add to that in terms of it was kind of funny watching them come across the hatch and seeing how tan they were too after spending a week in Florida compared to us. One of the more memorable things, again, there was a lot throughout this whole mission, and as Soichi said, you could talk about EVAs, you could talk about robotics. I would say one of the things that really stood out for me was the port relocation that we did, and again, this was the first time from a U.S. side that we've done something like that, and so it was absolutely fantastic day. Things went really well, and it was great to prove out that capability. And then along with that, I've been sleeping in Resilience this entire mission, and the views now from the top of station have just been absolutely stunning.
Yeah, he's going to keep rubbing that awesome view in. None of us have windows in our room, so, this whole mission has been amazing. I would just answer the entire mission. As the only first-time flyer in the group, every single thing we've done up here has been the first time I've been able to do that. But one thing that did really profoundly impact me was the very first time I got out of the seat after Resilience was safely in orbit and I looked out the window and saw the Earth from 250 miles up. I will never forget that moment, and I actually recorded it because I really wanted to remember how I felt. It wasn't about the view, it was how the view made me feel, and that, every time I look out the window in the cupola, I still feel the same way. Earth is amazing, it's beautiful, it protects us, and so we should work hard to protect it.
Wow, going last is really hard because they got everything I was going to say. So really high on my list is the camaraderie amongst the crew, the camaraderie amongst our international partners. When we get to spend time with our cosmonaut colleagues who work in a different part of the station most of the time than we do, it is just really nice to have this international brotherhood, sisterhood up here.
Those are all great answers. Let's take one next from space.com with Megan Bartels.
Hey, thanks so much. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So I'm curious, you four left in the middle of this massive pandemic, and you're coming back still during the middle of this massive pandemic. Could you talk a little bit about what that's like, sort of how you were hoping things would go when you did lift off, anything related to that, what it's going to be like to land and have everyone be wearing masks?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I know all of us were hoping that when we landed, or when we will land, that the pandemic would be at a different stage. That being said, people are being vaccinated in the U.S., and so things are looking better. We will be going back. We'll be actually in a semi-quarantine just like we were when before we launched, because when we return, our immune systems are a little bit depressed, and so we're going to do everything we can do to keep everybody safe. We definitely have enjoyed not wearing masks up here, and having to go back and wear masks is, well, it's what we will do because that is the right thing to do.
Another important question about what happens when you return to Earth from Hector on Twitter, who wants to know what's the first thing you're going to eat.
Of course, I like to eat a lot of stuff, but one thing I like to have is the water with the bubble.
I'm just hoping I'm hungry when I land, because we're landing on water, and I think all of us are a little curious to see what that's going to be like. Coming back from space, the zero-G, micro-G environment is always difficult when you get into the 1G, and then now doing it on water. If I have an appetite, that's going to be a bonus, and so I'm probably not going to have I'm really not going to care that much about what it is I eat.
All right, next from Jess on Twitter. She's asking whether weightlessness affects your dreams.
I don't actually remember dreaming. Since I've been up here on orbit, I haven't had many dreams, or at least don't remember them. But I will say this. We talk a lot about how to describe flying and floating to people, and what I've started telling folks is it's like living your dreams about flying. So I guess maybe making a dream reality is the closest thing that I can relate. But I don't know. Maybe it. I can't remember any, so... Oh.
Yeah, last time I remember that during the stay on the orbit, I dream about life on the ground. Once I come back, I always dream about the space, life in space. So it's kind of other way around.
Makes sense. Okay, let's go back to the phone bridge now. We're going to take one from Mark Carreau with Aviation Week.
Thank you. How has having 5 crew in the U.S. segment benefited the productivity for science, maintenance, other activities?
5 crew definitely makes a difference. You can really feel how busy it is up here. Very different from when I was here before and we had 3 USOS. I think one of the biggest examples of how much our productivity increased is during the EVAs, a series of EVAs. We had 4 people involved in EVAs and 1 person that can continue doing science and maintenance on the station. Normally when we have spacewalks, everything else shuts down. And so just having that extra person allows I think it's more than 1 person's worth of work to get done.
Just about out of time, but I think we can fit in one from Robert Perlman with Collect Space next.
Thanks. Your splashdown will almost double the record for the longest spaceflight by a U.S. spacecraft, as previously set by Skylab 4. What does it mean to you to be on a record-breaking mission, and what does the record represent for the future of U.S. capabilities in space?
Yeah, Shannon just said one small step, and I think that's a good way to put it. You know, when we passed the Skylab mission, we actually had an opportunity to talk with one of the astronauts, and it was absolutely fantastic. You know, you talk about setting records, and the record that they set, I think, is really pretty significant, particularly when you think about how long it stood. I don't anticipate that our record is going to stand that long, and that's a good thing as well. And so, yeah, it was great to break that record, but I think for all of us, it was more of just a privilege to get to share that moment with those that had really broken ground and really were standing on their shoulders today.
We have a little more time than I was anticipating, so we're actually going to go next to Randy Ginner from Phelan Magazine.
Hello. Just wanted to ask questions about your experiences with the experiments that you've had with the tissue chips, including perhaps the microbes that you were doing. Have you, for example, do you plan to bring home some radishes on the splashdown? Any fascinating advancements that you found with those with the tissue chips, for example, and the microscopic microgravity stuff that you've encountered there?
Yeah, so, great question. I mean, the science, man, we've done a lot of science, and all of us were kind of trying to remember, because I think that some of those happened very early in the increment, and so, you know, a lot of that science has actually come home on the SpaceX vehicle before us, and so we oftentimes don't get to see the results of what's happened up here until much later, because the investigators on the ground, once they get that back, they need time to analyze it and study it, and then make conclusions about what it means. And sometimes that means getting results back from multiple increments as well. And so, you know, some of the crops that we did grow up here through veggie and like the radishes as well, you know, we did get to try some of those out while we were up here, and I think all of us would agree that it is amazing to have fresh food up here, fresh vegetables like that. So that was very exciting. So we can at least give you our conclusions on those. Those are a definite plus. Yeah, thumbs up.
Speaking of your research projects, Ian on Twitter, Laura on Facebook is asking, what was your favorite research project while you were in space?
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Well, there's a lot of interesting experiments. The one experiment I did, along with the 12 countries and regions in Asia, is growing herbs. It's actually basil. Although we did not able to eat it, but we really enjoy watching it grow. And the response from all the students around Asian and Pacific region is just fantastic. And they are very happy to see it grow, and they are happy to do the same kind of experiment on the ground to compare the results. So that's another great triumph of international cooperation.
I would say one of the experiments that I really enjoyed doing is we had a whole bunch of little bitty worms up here, and we were looking at, under a microscope, how the worms behave, how their muscles work in space. And it was a multi-generational experiment, which was really fascinating just to see over time, long amounts of time, how worms behave. It was pretty neat.
Sounds like it. Okay, next we're going to go to Mara on Twitter, who wants to know what your NASA duties will be once you return to Earth.
So when we first return, it's to get back with our families and see our families, and then to go through the reconditioning process. So about 45 days worth of making sure that we can function safely back on Earth and readapt to living in 1G, and that'll be our primary directive. After that, we'll spend some time traveling around and talking about the mission and visiting our international partner sites as long as it's safe to travel, to debrief and to make sure that all of the NASA and our international space agency partners learn our lessons from this mission, as well as our partner SpaceX, and then also to go out and talk to the public about this amazing mission that we were fortunate to be a part of. And then after that, it'll be up to our boss.
I'm looking forward to the talking to the public part. Let's go back to the phone bridge now with Philyn Barber from Low Profiles Magazine.
Mike, congratulations on being the first Space Force officer aboard the ISS. What's the difference in your missions duties between this branch of service versus being an Air Force officer / NASA astronaut as you were on your previous mission? Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Lynn. Thanks for the question. Actually, my duties really haven't changed. Before I was an Air Force officer that was assigned to NASA, and NASA dictated what my duties were. And now I'm a Space Force officer assigned to NASA, and NASA is dictating what my duties are. And so that will continue up until I leave the astronaut corps, and there's no plans for that happening anytime soon. So, at this point in time, my duties really haven't changed. And so in terms of what I would do if I did go back to the Space Force, that would be determined at that time.
And next we're going to get one from Nim Shaw with Irish Science Communicator.
Hi there. How are you? Thanks very much. I was watching you all embrace on Saturday when Crew-2 arrived, and for some of us around the world, embracing our loved ones isn't possible. I was just wondering, on your days when you miss your family, what do you do to get over it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we're always missing our family, but we actually have pretty good communications with our family. We're able to phone them, to make phone calls to them just about any time we want if there's satellite hookups. And then once a week, we'll get a video conference with them, so we get to see them fairly often. It'd be better to be on the ground embracing them, but until then, we have to deal with electronic communications.
Next, we'll go to Russell Pounds with Pacific Rim Media.
Hello, great to be with you. I'm calling from Alaska today, and my question is for Victor. The story I'm working on is about women, girls, and people of color discovering careers in science. Can you talk about the importance of creating those opportunities for a diverse workforce? And along with that, when you talk to young people, what's the thing that causes the light to go on and spark their interest?
Well, that's a little bit of a big question, and I'll start with the end. The thing I think that creates the spark is just aerospace in general, airplanes, spacecraft, rockets, things that make a lot of noise and go really fast are exciting. And so the shuttle was an amazing vehicle to watch as a kid. The SpaceX boosters going up and coming back and landing on the ships or in the landing zones are amazing, and those things captivate people. That grabs their heart, and then you have the opportunity to then fill their brains. And so I like to share with them to be resilient, to be lifelong learners, and to be good teammates. And I think those things are a recipe for success no matter what you do. And so that's the same message I talk to whatever group I talk to, a professional group or students. I think that's the important thing to focus on, is to be your best and do your best, because you can look at the news or watch the news and see that the world needs the best that we can muster. It needs the best from each and every one of us every single day. And so it's great that it's getting so much attention, that we want the best of everyone, and that we're going to do this and do it in a way that's inclusive.
Great advice. Let's go next to a follow-up from Marcia Dunn with the Associated Press.
Yes, hi again. I'm just wondering how long you might have to wait before you get your COVID-19 vaccines upon return. And I got to ask, what foods are you looking forward to for your first meals back on Earth? Thank you.
Yeah, what the flight docs are telling us is that we'll get a COVID vaccine 7 to 10 days after we get back. I don't know which version we'll be getting, but long about that time frame. And as for me, what I'm looking forward to, a nice big crunchy salad.
Talking about the food, I think for me it's just something that's freshly prepared. Everything that we eat up here was cooked or packaged years ago, and so I'm really looking forward to something that just comes right out of the kitchen to my plate, to my mouth.
Okay, we'll wrap up now with one last follow-up question from Megan Bartels at Space.com.
Hey, thanks so much for taking a second question. I wanted to ask, if you get another space station mission, would you want to fly Crew Dragon again, or would you want to be giving a different vehicle a try? And either way, why?
3 vehicles?
Well, first of all, the Dragon is a wonderful vehicle, and I'll be happy to fly many times. But it's the same apply for the space shuttle and the Soyuz. So I'll be happy to fly 3 different space vehicles. But now the race is on to who's going to be the first one to fly the 4 different kinds.
You don't pass up a ride to space.
That is great. That's all we have time for, but thank you so much, Crew-1, for talking with us. We really appreciate it. Safe journeys on your way home later this week, and we will be watching. For those at home, keep an eye on nasa.gov and tune in to nasa.gov/live to follow along with these guys as they make their way home later this week. Safe journey, Crew-1.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.